Hey guys, welcome back to part 3 of this mini series where I've been talking about the cars that I've owned in the past. And so yesterday we talked about my Chrysler Sebring, and following that Chrysler Sebring, today, as mentioned in the yesterday's video, for some of you who watched would know that we're going to be talking about my 2002 Mazda Protege 5. So for those of you who are not familiar with the Mazda Protege 5, it's essentially a Mazda Protege station wagon. I think there's some similarities between the Focus wagon and the Protege 5. I'm not sure exactly how much, since Mazda was owned by Ford at that time. Or they were in a partnership of some kind. But anyhow, I had the Mazda Protege 5. And buying that car was... I did like the reliability of the first Mazda I had, so I figured, oh, it's a Mazda, can't really go wrong, it'll drive nice. And I saw this one that was lower mileage, so lower again, it was I think 130 some odd thousand kilometers on it when I bought it. It was 5-speed, black, fully loaded, well, fully loaded minus, the only option I did not have on mine was the chrome rims and the leather interior, which was a very rare find, at least in Canada for us. So, but it did have everything else, including power windows, locks, mirrors, sunroof, AM/FM CD player, air conditioning, and again a really nice 5-speed that it came with. It was actually, again, much of a reminder of the first Mazda I had. The transmission felt very solid, very stiff once it was in gear. You could have sworn that it was welded there, not just something you put in gear and take out of gear in a minute or so. Overall, the interior of the car was perfect. There wasn't one scuff inside, there wasn't any wear marks on it, and same goes for the outside. So the car was in really good shape. So whoever owned it previously obviously took care of it when I bought it. And what I liked about that car was initially I liked the way it drove. It was a very sporty ride, very firm suspension, and by firm I mean that was also the reason why I ended up selling it after a while, because I just couldn't take a ride that firm, especially with having a baby on the way. It did not make much sense to have a car that had the suspension of a go-kart essentially. So there was no body lean, there wasn't really any bumps absorption, and it was a sporty ride but not a family ride. So my other thing that I was a little disappointed with when I bought it, I figured station wagon got the practicality of a hatchback with more space, but at the end of the day it did not really have any more space than a Golf, like a normal station. At the end of the day it did not have any more space than a regular Volkswagen Golf. And I expected, because it's a wagon, I'd get a bit extra space, and I did not get that. The other disappointment was folding the seats down didn't give you a nice flat surface. It was almost like a raised portion where the seats are. So it wasn't as practical as one might imagine it to be. But it was still a fun little car to drive. Had a 2-liter, 16-valve double overhead cam engine that made 122 horse, which was not sufficient for the car. The other one that had less power felt quicker, whereas this one with more power, I think it also had a lot more weight, because this one came with front airbags, side airbags, ABS, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So it was probably a significantly more heavy car than the other one, which is where it lost that. But again, it was not too bad. One of the issues that I had with that car, unfortunately, was the rust, and it wasn't necessarily on the body panels, but it was, again, underneath, similar to the other Mazda. My first rust issue was my rear brake caliper decided to seize one day. Essentially it was rusted seized after overnight parking outside. So that was my first disappointment with that Mazda. But again, mechanically it started, it drove. I didn't have any squeaks or rattles, even though it was very stiff. And the downside of that car also, driving wise was U-turns or turning radius. It was it was not a car you could do a U-turn on unless you were on a major highway possibly, and even then you probably have a hard time. So just for comparison, a normal U-turn, if I was turning from a 2-lane road onto a 2-lane road to do a full U-turn, I could not succeed. I would have to back up and do it. So a 3-point turnaround on a normal street was also not something that car could do. It was more about a 5-point turnaround. So if you're going to go pass a driving test with it, I would not recommend it, because even though you do wheel lock to lock, it was not a very good turning radius for that car. So that was one downfall, I think, because they had put wider tires on the standard Mazda. They couldn't make it turn as much, so they had to get rid of it. Anyhow, that was the Mazda. The car was good. Turning radius was bad. The ride was too stiff. It drove nice. And the purchase of that car was probably my first real major negotiating strategy or tactics. So I found that car at a major dealership. So in this case, it was a Nissan dealership, local here. And the asking price for that car was $6,500 plus tax, plus licensing, plus we also here have an emission test, so a smog test, taxes, registration, safety certificate. And going into the dealership, I went to go see it, and I had a number I thought I'd be able to get away with. And then once I was there, during the negotiations, I realized that the salesman or the dealership is really motivated at trying to get rid of this car. So they were asking $6,500. I was thinking maybe I could pay $5,000 plus tax. Not a bad deal. But then when I realized that they seemed very eager to sell the car, I started negotiating with them. And after walking out or getting to the front door twice, my wife and I managed to get that car for $4,000 after taxes, registration, licensing, which also included them doing new brakes and new battery and new sway bar bushings. Just during the test drive, I thought that I could slightly hear the sway bar links, so they decided to replace the links and the bushings in that $4,000. So that was one of those deals where I realized I got a great deal, since as is condition, private sales for those cars at the time were about $5,000. So that was my Mazda. It was a fun little car. Nothing crazy special about it. Nothing really horrible. So it was time for me to sell it after I had that car for about 7 months. 7 months after I bought it, I sold that car for $4,700. So just gives you an idea of how good of a deal it was. So anyhow, that was my Mazda, and tomorrow we'll talk about my what did I buy after the Mazda? Oh, it was a 94 Honda Civic that I actually bought during my ownership of that Mazda. So we'll talk quickly about that Honda Civic, and following that was a 2000 Honda Accord that I bought. So tomorrow's episode will have a 94 Civic and a 2000 Accord, so it'll be a double up episode. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. If you like the video, subscribe, come back to watch the other videos, and see you guys soon.